Breakdown is brought to you by Nurofen Zavance, available every day at Chemist Warehouse.
Tēnā koutou katoa, welcome into the breakdown, and what a blockbuster weekend of international rugby we were treated to over the weekend. The All Blacks starting with an absolute bang in the Southern Hemisphere, going through with a clean sweep. To relive all the action after the weekend, Jeff Wilson joins us, Justin Marshall, very special guest today, Alan Quinlan, great to have you joining us, and Sir John Kerwin as well. What did you make of the first weekend?
Oh, I love it when the underdog wins. What a great weekend. Then go the Warriors.
Which underdog are you talking about? The Warriors. Are they the underdogs you're talking about?
Of course. No, I thought it was probably one of the best performances for a first test from the All Blacks, because I didn't think Ireland were that bad, and I thought they were really, really good at times. But the All Blacks, after a bit of an interesting start, 20 minutes, really got into their work.
You're wearing your Irish green and your tartan as well tonight, JK. Is that just to welcome Alan to the programme?
It is, of course.
It's good to be here. Disappointed after the weekend, though, but I think a little bit of a shock. I met all these guys before the match yesterday, and they thought I was a bit pessimistic about Ireland. I thought there'd be a backlash and a reaction. There was, certainly. I was pretty happy with the first 20 minutes, the way Ireland started, but fell asunder for probably 11 or 12 minutes just before half-time, and then game over, really.
Well, Justin, you and I, though, we caught up after the game, we had a beer, we started discussing what the game had delivered, and we found it really, really difficult to say a bad word about any of the players that were playing in the game.
Yeah, we did.
Bottom line, both sides played really, really well, and 42-19 didn't really reflect the amount of pressure the All Blacks were under. And that's what's great, because I'm already looking forward to next weekend, because we'd expect the All Blacks to get better, but we know Ireland are going to be better. And they were right there for big periods of this game. Look, it was great and nice to get a win at Eden Park, 48,000 people, great atmosphere, but this was just the beginning.
But what was really good about it, and absolutely agree, was the fact that what we got was a test match which was really intense. Like, for all of the points that were scored, over 60 points, what I was super impressed with the physicality. Some of the skills on display, the tries, even the Irish try that Earl scored was just fantastically put together, 18 phases. Some of the All Blacks breakouts, some of their set-piece work. But more importantly, some of the contact, like in that game, was making the crowds get on their feet, because, you know, both teams went at it hammer and tongs. It was just a really good test match. You'd think you'd get sometimes just a little bit of, you know, drop ball, and it wouldn't get into the rhythm and players would be slightly off. They were not off.
Absolutely no rust at all, was there?
No.
The first test of the year. You talk about physicality. JK, did the All Blacks dominate all the areas they should have?
No, I don't think they did. I probably thought that the breakdown to start with was a real... They struggled to handle it early. And then they adjusted to it and started sort of giving Ireland some real issues there. The interesting thing for me was the amount of defence the All Blacks had to do to keep Ireland out, which was a great effort. But if you look at it, if you're nitpicking, you wouldn't want probably to be doing, 200-odd tackles? I mean, Scott Barrett, we'll probably talk about that shortly, made 20-odd tackles. But Ireland are absolutely amazing when they've got the ball in hand. The first try, I think you said, Marshall, was 18 rucks or something like that. It was, when they hang on to the ball, they're throwing a lot of options at you. And so I think a little bit more possession next week would be what the All Blacks would probably want.
Alan, I'm interested in your thoughts in regards to how different and significantly different was to November and the performances that Ireland have put together to beat the All Blacks. You know, it was always a big ask coming to New Zealand at this time of the year, our first test match of the year. But what did you notice was significantly different about the contest?
I think the mistakes. I think if you go back to that game in November, I thought it was the most complete performance that I'd seen from an Irish side against New Zealand. They didn't make mistakes. They controlled the tempo of the game. Their breakdown and efficiency was excellent. Set piece really good. And I worried that you can deliver and back up that. I expected an angry reaction from the All Blacks, which I think the Irish players knew that was coming themselves. And I was really enthused by the start, you know, the way Ireland kind of controlled things. Their breakdown was good. They were getting over the gain line. There were little passes inside, outside, not running straight at New Zealand players, and they got that right. But then, you know, Severis gets to try, and the momentum switches. So what was different for me was Ireland weren't able to cope with that pressure. There was moments when in Dublin, when the All Blacks were putting a lot of pressure on Ireland, but they looked controlled, their body language was good. And I just think that try changed the flow, and they went, oh no, we're doing quite well here, and we're now 14 points to 5 down. Set piece as well. That set piece was brilliant in Dublin. We were the ones stealing All Black lineouts in Dublin. Yesterday, you know, there was a few lineouts, the timing was wrong, and then the scrum was creaking a little bit as well. So you've got to get those things right against a team like that. And for the Irish team, and for us as Irish people, we know when you're playing the All Blacks, you've got to be on the money, and they weren't always there last night, and that changed, and they got punished ruthlessly at times.
Is your Irish team too dependent on Sexton?
Possibly. We've been trying to bring some depth and trying to find players like that. You know, Ronan O'Gara was in the 10 jersey. You guys probably played against him. Then Johnny Sexton comes on. We're just not producing guys who are, you know, 3 or 4 options that you can switch it up and that they're putting pressure on each other. He's been incredibly resilient and a top-class international player for such a long time. And he's still delivering the goods, but you become over-reliant and you want somebody to kind of put that pressure on. Joey Carberry, we believe, has the quality and the talent, and I thought he played really well last night under the circumstances. He's had a couple of long-term injuries, but Sexton's mentality separates him from the rest. He just has this steel about him, and he just makes Ireland tick. I think that was a problem when he went off a little bit.
We're going to get into Ireland and do a deep dive into it, but first the All Blacks. Scott Barrett, we've been looking for the answer at blindside. Did that experiment work, Marshy? Do you think he'll be back there this weekend?
I think he absolutely delivered what the All Blacks were after from that position, which was physicality. That's what they needed. When you had the back row that they did and Sam Cane coming back basically for his first Test match, you needed somebody that basically could hit breakdowns, who could be a menace at the ruck, and he certainly was that. Made a lot of tackles, carried hard when he needed to. He played a traditional blindside flanker role, so he adjusted, but he still had the niggle of a lock. He was still there over the ball, cleaning out rucks, so he balanced it out really well. So, yeah, I think the experiment absolutely worked.
I don't think it was an experiment, because I think he knows how to play blindside flanker.
Yeah.
I think he understands the positions. He understood the role he had to play on the weekend, and it suited his skill set. They wanted to be physical. Conditions suited him to go out and do that. I think it was a strong selection. Whether or not that's the selection this weekend going forward, I'm not convinced. Whether or not, and I'm going to throw it out there already, do we give Sam Whitelock a week off and introduce some new blood in the middle row? Do we move Scott Barrett across? Because we know about Sam Whitelock. I mean, this week, JK, the selection process during this week as he screws up his face, like he always does, Sir John Kerwin. You know, you don't change your winning team, you want combinations, but this was never the original selection, this team, was it? Everyone was fit.
Didn't we just say how good Ireland were? We want to win the series. Put it in the bag this week and then make your changes. However,
keep the pressure on.
Getting back to Scott Barrett, though, this is amazing. How long ago did Jerome Kino retire? Was that 2000?
I don't think I think he's still playing.
He's still around. Like I went out afterwards and say, oh, it was Jerome Kino-like performance, you know, from Barrett. But I think the interesting thing about Barrett, before we get to your ridiculous idea of changing the whole football team for this week.
I didn't say the whole football team.
Yeah, but listen, Scott Barrett, if you're playing Northern Hemisphere, and you'll know this, you put wing forward, you call them, over there. Big bodies over there, aggressive at the ruck. I didn't think, Marshy, that he tried too hard either. He just carried hard, like you see on the screen, and was really aggressive at the ruck. So when we play Northern Hemisphere teams, and you've got one, I know, Mahani in your team, is that how we need to play? Are we going to get back to, against Northern Hemisphere, let's just take him as he's a big body.
Yeah, but the big body's got to still have balance. He's still got to be skillful because he's got to complement the way that our forwards can play. So he does that because he's a ball player. But most importantly, it balanced out areas we've been a little bit off recently. So scrum was very good. You got more grunt there. When you got a big guy who usually pushes in the second row, he's pushing hard on the flank. No doubt about it. Secondly, the line-out options it gives you. When you've got a genuine guy that can be used as a line-out option at 6, they used Artie as well, then you got Whitelock, then you got Retallick. There's no secret that the scrum was good and the line-out was good, because Barrett was on the blind side and he was optioned for all of those.
And one in particular, our line-out defence in particular.
Yeah.
The number of times Ireland got down there, Alan, you got down and had good field position, and all of a sudden you weren't able to drive. Yeah. And I think that was really important for us.
He reminds me of Tyke Byrne. Similar scenario. They're not huge second rows, but they're big back rows. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. Yeah. And I want to make sure I'm complimenting both. They're incredible footballers. I think the work rate of Scott Barrett is sensational. Every international team in the world wouldn't have a problem putting him as a sixth, because he has that versatility, he has that grunt, he's low tackle focus, incredible. So, you know, Tyke Byrne can do that for Ireland. He can play in the back row. So I just think the pressure he puts in the line-out as well. You know, O'Mahony probably got the nod over Conan in the back row because of that line-out stuff and breakdown. But Scott Barrett can do that for New Zealand. He was brilliant yesterday.
And to answer your second question, no. We bring in those that might have had COVID, so possibly those guys that were selected.
Oh, you're going to go there now?
Hold on, you are changing.
You're going to go there now?
Hold on, you're changing the team.
Yeah, but I'm not resting Whitelock.
2.5 minutes ago, you were saying...
I'm not resting Whitelock.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that, yeah.
Are you bringing back the COVID cases? Will Jordan, David Havili and Jack Goodhue?
Well, I'm considering them as available. I think Havili, we need to get him into the midfield because we'll need those combinations later on. So if he's well, bring him in. I think Will Jordan has been the informed player, but I still leave Scott Barrett out there and because these are big, the Irish guys are big and aggressive at the ruck. Scott Barrett, leave Sam out there and say, Sam, big week this week, son. And then we're 2-0 up. You get the last week off. Go to Queenstown.
Yeah, I'm looking
at Queenstown.
Yeah, hold on. I'm looking at from a perspective though of if you want to find guys, can they deliver under pressure? If it's 2-0, there's no pressure on. There's no pressure to go out and perform other than winning a test match for the All Blacks, not to decide a series. If you've got guys you want to see in the big stage, why not do it in Dunedin? I'm not saying wholesale changes, but you could rest Sam Whitelock, and he was outstanding. I want to find out about Tupou Vai. I want to see him out in the field. Couldn't even make the 23. Here's a guy who was outstanding in Super Rugby, great for the All Blacks last year. Slot him in and give him an opportunity. Give him an opportunity to play. Or is it Brodie Retallick? I'm just saying that we need to sometimes manage some of these other guys who've got big workloads, are going to have big workloads through the course of the season, and I want to see guys perform under pressure.
Can he run your line out, though, Tupou Vai?
Well, Scott Barrett can still be out there at blindside.
Yeah, but I mean, who calls the line out then? You know, because I think that's the key. If you take Whitelock out, you're now looking at, and you probably need to get that depth. If you got an injury, who runs that line out and who makes those calls? And that's really crucial.
He's so good at that.
You know that as a
I do.
Blues found that out.
You want that confidence as well from your pack leader, your line out leader. And Whitelock, he's been...
Yeah, for as much as I used to look at them thinking, what are these imbeciles up to? Honestly, there's about 1,000 numbers. Everyone's moving all over the place. They actually know what they're doing. And when it's done well, it gives you quality ball. And it's important to pick the right areas and notice where the opposition are weak and how to pick them off. Sam Whitelock's a genius like that.
I get that, but he's not going to be around forever.
True.
We have to prepare for the future. You keep talking about the limited number of test matches we're going forward. I'm sure Ireland's in the same position. You talk about developing talent.
Ireland never change anyone.
We don't have the same depth as you guys, though. That's the problem.
I've seen the same football team for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the rocket science and the whole thing, which is...
We brought in some hookers. Kelleher, Sheehan.
You've had to for injury.
Doris. There's 3.
Yeah.
Keller is injured. He's back in Dublin. He was brilliant in November. Dan Sheehan has been brilliant. We switched Porter over. We'd like to have a few more second rows, though, definitely.
Well, this is great chat, Alan. You're doing fantastic with these 3. But let's get an Irish perspective. We're going to hear from the head coach, Andy Farrell.
Playing against a good side, aren't we? You know, we obviously started very well, and then they hit us on the transition, didn't they, quite a bit, and before you know it, you're behind. You've got to be on it every second, you know, and we was trailing, obviously, by a good margin at half-time, but I thought the fight back, Smithy, in the second half was great by us, you know. Yeah. 5 times we got stopped, either just short or held up over the line, etc. You know what I mean? And everyone knows that when you play the All Blacks, you've got to take those opportunities. But we'll take the positives from it as well, you know, because we were dangerous at times. We held our composure and kept fighting to the end.
It's only really like a 15-20 minute period towards the end of the first half. It was the difference, really.
Again, you know, you think you're going all right, and then all of a sudden there's a turnover and they hit you on the break, and we knew that was coming, but Stopping it was a different thing tonight for us. And listen, we've got plenty of things to tidy up, but this is 1-0 in a 3-game series, and you know, next week's a big week for us. We certainly know that they're going to get better, because that's traditionally what happens the whole time. And under the roof, it suits them with the style of rugby that they play. But we'll show the team over the coming days what we need to do to get better. We'll show them what we did really well, and we'll be in with a fight.
Fighting talk. Alan, Andy just mentioned that 15-minute period before halftime. What did you see?
I just saw some decisions under pressure that inhibited Ireland and cost them a little bit. I think the Severis try, very obviously, was 7-5, 29 minutes gone the clock. So it was really 11 minutes. You know, Johnny Sexton, you know, picking up the knock. He got it in his head knock just before this, but they just lost their shape a little bit here, and I think it was kind of crucial. And I think mentally they just dropped. You know, this is it really. You know, they just got a little bit flat. The attack they started with early on, the try you were talking about that try from Keith Earls. You know, precision, great lines, all that kind of stuff. They just lost their shape there. When he scores a try, then they're running back down the field in under the post, and I think it has a psychological effect. And that started some poor decisions, some penalties, set-piece issues, and the All Blacks were ruthless. You know, this is one in 32 minutes, I think, 14-5. Gibson Park has been absolutely brilliant for Ireland. One from Hugo Keenan here. I think you got to put that in touch. That's on 33 minutes. And this was when there was a bit of chaos going on. We won a line out there, and Jamison broke off the line out, turnover, try from Tupaya. James Ryan here, and he's captained Ireland. It was just an easy out here from the kickoff. And they were just little things that they'll look back, and Andy Farrell will talk about it, and Paul O'Connell and the coaches, they'll go through this. The players will see it themselves. Under that pressure and that chaos against an incredibly talented, powerful side, they just added a little bit to their own downfall.
If you make those tactical errors in the Six Nations, do you get away with them?
No, you do sometimes, yeah. You probably don't. There's probably 4 or 5 there, John. That was too many. You might get away with 2 or 3, 2 maybe, and someone will scramble back and you won't be punished. But against a team like New Zealand, who have that pace, power, you know, precision, and they really punished Ireland at times. You know, from the one there where Gibson Park breaks out off the maul. You know, as a former forward, they're under pressure, they're back down there, they win the line out, they're creeping out a little bit. That's got to go down the field. He breaks out, turnover, ball through from Barrett, and it's a try under the sticks. You know, Aaron Smith makes the break off the maul as well. That's on the back of the James Ryan penalty. It came from stuff like that. I can't be critical of the Irish guys, because they played with their heart on the sleeve and they never gave up against a very powerful team. But
I think the big issue in it all, because you're really right and you're really relevant, was what was kind of bizarre was they weren't chasing the game at that stage.
Yeah.
So why take quick taps? I'm not saying they would have
won, Justin, either. I'm not saying it was a defining situation.
Yeah. But they were chasing the game. It looked like they were chasing the game and chasing the scoreboard.
Control. The game got out of control.
And it was like, hang on,
there was nothing to reset.
Yeah, why have you lost your
their collective
composure?
Has been their strength in the last number of years, even under Joe Schmidt and then Andy Farrell. It's a collective effort. They're precise. They don't make a lot of mistakes, and they're a very difficult team to get the ball back off. I just thought they lost the shape in the attack. Severis goes down, and then it was just mistake, discipline, wrong decision, and against the All Blacks, you're going to be pressurised and punished.
I think one of the great things that Ireland rugby have done is they've had the balance right between their kicking game and holding on to position. And that's where their accuracy has come from. The kicking game was so good with Conor Murray for so long. The box kick, the defensive line was all of a sudden the unstructured play through turnovers, through poor decisions.
Jeff, in the last 12 months.
Absolutely.
14 months where their attack and precision has been really good. We saw that with the first try. But I just think the little bit of control, and you mentioned Sexton going off, he was gone during that. It might have been a time just to someone to say, go down injured for a sec, slow the game down, because you could see the All Blacks were growing, weren't they? They were saying, we got a chance, punish here. And then you got the Sevilla try just before half-time, which was a real killer blow for them. They're now psychologically really damaged going in at half-time. But I tell you, I was really proud of them. It's glass half full for me. I'm not saying they're going to go to Nuneaton and win, but they came up...
You heard it here first. You've just said it.
Yeah. So do they make changes?
Is Sexton available?
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know.
I think afterwards Andy Farrell said he passed his HIA. I thought Joey Carberry did really well. We got to go to a World Cup next year. Sexton's, he's retiring after the World Cup. We need someone to take over. You're talking about depth. We don't have the same number of options that we can tweak it. We've got a lot of good loose forwards, some good young players coming through from our 20s as well this year. But I think they've got to try and keep as many of them together as they can. They don't have huge options, you know, and Dave Heffernan got a head knock as well. Yes, the hooker, we had Niall Scannell came out during the week. He was on holidays in Portugal, so a few issues. Cian Healy sat on the bench last night, you know, with an injury that looked like a career-threatening injury on Wednesday night, made a freakish recovery, but obviously they kept him off. So I don't know. I don't think Ireland will make many. Depends on bruises and knocks, but, you know, I thought they were... To be fair, they stuck in there last night, and the response in the second half was... There was every chance it was going to be 50-60, but they fought like really hard, and they can take a bit out of that.
I mean, we're expecting a big response, right, after what we saw last night?
Yeah,
it wasn't over.
Look, I also think we also have to compliment the All Blacks for all that.
Yeah, they were
after
superb.
20 minutes, they significantly changed their mindset. Their line speed and defence completely changed, and all of a sudden those players
initially
became under pressure, and then breakdowns. They started counter-rucking.
Correct.
They recognised that they were being outplayed in those two areas. Dane Cole said it when we interviewed him. He said, we are not getting in their face. Our line speed is off. And whatever happened, the message got out there, and they changed the picture Ireland was seeing. And Ireland made mistakes, didn't adapt, made poor decisions.
During that time, I thought Ireland needed to be a bit direct.
Yeah.
Just one-out runners, just keep it going, hold on to the ball, and they were trying to be a little ladder. So, look, it's easy to look at it and say in hindsight, but...
Well, they will now, because they can,
possibly,
and they'll prepare now.
And I think
they can
Andy
prepare.
Farrell will look at it, Jeff, and he will think, look, here's the mistakes we made. We can't afford to. There's no guarantee that you're going to go out and not make mistakes in a test match, but they'll try and fix that and give it a crack next week.
Well, there were plenty of other tests over the weekend, and things got fiery at Optus Stadium in Perth between, well, an English lock and an Aussie lock, and also the coach, Eddie Jones.
You look at the history of the game, whenever you get a red card, the referee evens it up. That's the history. Yeah, it's social reciprocality. That happens, mate. That's normal. And we've got to be good enough to handle that.
So you don't think you've got the rub of the green?
No, I didn't say that, mate. But that happens in every game of rugby. Every game of rugby I've seen, where a team gets a red card and the opposition tries to even up, because they're nice blokes, referees. I'm not criticising the referee at all. I'm not using it as an excuse. That's just the reality of rugby.
Is that the reality of rugby? What do you think, JK?
Well, the reality of rugby was that both of them probably should have got a red card. The behaviour of both the locks was ridiculous. We don't need that in our game. I don't know why they didn't pick up the first sort of push in the head. That was ridiculous. I think Eddie was against a 20-minute red card. So...
Go figure.
You got to live it. I think what normally happens, got nothing to do with the ref, is that the players that have a red card against them lift, and they really get up for each other and they defend and they find another gear. That's how I see it. I don't see it anything to do with the refs.
I've never heard that before in my life. Where all of a sudden he's saying in the history of the game, and pretty much everything I've heard in the game is never talked about when someone's got sent off, the referee has a sympathy towards that team. He doesn't ignore the rules and laws of the game, he just ends up refereeing. They weren't good enough to get the job done, pure and simple. They had the opportunity. Look, James O'Connor was up in the stands doing a function. He has to go and sit on the bench. They lose Quade Cooper in the warm-up. And Noah Lolesio was outstanding. He goes out there and delivers probably his best performance in the Wallaby jersey. The Wallabies and Dave Rennie, and I'm sure their chairman as well, Hamish McLennan, are all smiling because, bottom line, this was a huge step up for... I'm not giving England anything on this. This was about the Wallabies for me, and they weren't good enough to beat a 14-man Wallaby team. And so, I tell you what, you're under pressure, don't deflect. Don't deflect, it's on you, Eddie Jones.
Cracks me up because before the game, you and I were talking about this game. And they talked about Lolesio coming in. We both shook our head and said, that's not going to be good for Aussie. He's up awesome. Player of the match. What do we know? But, yeah, absolutely agree. Like, the Australians galvanised, and then England thought everything's not fair, and they usually grit their teeth, and they didn't. Australia really did. They showed character.
I think players have moments, and I think Lolesio is good enough, but he's probably been putting too much pressure on himself. There he is thinking he's got to get the pies and the chips for the bench, and he's on. And he probably hasn't put as much pressure on himself during the week. He's just gone out there and played his natural game. I always remember Ardi Sevilla coming on against Argentina. I think one of the Whitelocks was playing number 8, got injured, and it was the beginning of the Ardi we see today. Sometimes, Alan, we've all done it. Players put too much pressure on themselves. I just think we and
probably over-analyse. I just thought that Australian performance, there was a little bit of grit that they have been missing for the last few years. There was a little bit of character that I saw from them, and a real physicality as well. So it was well-deserved performance from them. I think. Well, they were really good.
Grit from Australia, niggle from England. We're going to see one of the instances that led to the red card between Johnny Hill and Darcy Swain. Is this sort of character normal from Johnny Hill, Alan?
No, I haven't seen it. I think he's pretty physical, but I've never really seen it. They seem to be had a real issue with each other right from the start of this game. He should have been punished for that. You can't kind of do something like that pretty clearly. He should have went off for that, and he may have an issue afterwards, but look, you don't want to see that. You don't want to see... I think Darcy Swain, a little bit of inexperience, he kind of bit a little bit, didn't he? And he should have kind of put that in here or into his brain and waited to try and, get him in a tackle.
Hair pulling, come on. No, I mean, isn't that one of the unwritten rules in the game that you don't do this sort of stuff?
No,
I mean, it's mullet on mullet. That's what they're going for. Like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, what? Are you serious, JK? Justin, I mean, what's the game coming to if that's what they decide, driving in a mall's all about? And to be fair, if they dealt with the first one, where the guy's been pushed in the face, this may never have happened. I think they missed it. And look, he retaliated, he headbutted. Bottom line, he has to get punished for that.
But look at this. This is what really annoys me. Look at this guy.
Yeah, well, what did I do? What did I do?
Our game doesn't... Our game, we need to be very, very careful. So our game does not need both of those guys pulling here and stuff. Rugby's a hard enough game as it is to be aggressive and technically good, but aggression is not violence. And that is ridiculous for me. They both should be banned for a long, long time because it's not the message that we want to send to our kids coming up. And then he goes like that. It's like when the game, we don't want to see our rugby players taking a fall like sometimes you might see in other codes, especially football. We've got to clean it up. They should be throwing the book at both of them. And he goes and headbutts. Now, I'd probably, reacting to... It's frustrating, but headbutting is not the answer to it. But he needed to be protected before that by the officials.
You're nodding away, Marshy. Have you?
Yeah. I'm kind of...
He had some lovely blondie locks
I know.
Years ago. And
I was actually thinking it's a bit rich from him. Bloody hell, he's one of the toughest guys and one of those guys that
once
would
he
be...
played the Ospreys, I might have given him a little pinch or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you think the spice now, though. The spice in the series, though, right? Like the spice between these two teams for the next week.
Yeah.
I mean, and remembering that all coaches are under pressure year out from a Rugby World Cup in terms of getting performances.
But last night, Marshy mentioned it, that Irish and New Zealand game was absolutely aggressive. They were right into each other, no given, nothing given, nothing taken, very, very clean. There was not a lot of mistakes, even for high hits. I didn't see any. That's how the game should be played. Not pulling each other's hair, pushing each other in the head and then ending up headbutting. I mean, back in your era, our era is even worse. Your era was sort of in between, and everyone did that sort of stuff. But we're cleaning the game up. That sort of stuff we don't need anymore, right? What possibly you guys did, and you were aggressive too, Marshy, was in the tone of the game. But that's completely changed, right? Well, aggressive with the mouth.
Talk tough.
Well, we've still got plenty more to come on the breakdown. But first, rugby returned to the Republic for the first time international rugby post the pandemic. We'll look at the Springboks next.
For Wales, the 5 metres out, the reinforcements will come through. Springboks under pressure, Wales are over! Dan Bigger to regain the lead. Bigger's kick, flag stay down. Villaloo, soft hands, Sluice was an early tackle, penalty advantage. It's a deliberate knock-on. Deliberate knockdown. Deliberate knockdown. Important kick for Willemse. It's looking good. Damien Willemse wins it for the Springboks.
That did hurt.
Welcome back to the breakdown. It was a crazy final 10 minutes in South Africa, but Wales weren't happy with their Six Nations performance. Alan, do you think they've turned a corner from what you saw in that performance?
Well, that was a really good performance. I think, look, 18-3 up at half-time, dream scenario for them. Physical, I think they showed a lot of character. The power in the second half, from the Springboks. You know that if they get a line out down there, that 5 metre line, they're going to pile everyone in there, and they got a couple of tries there, got themselves back in the game. But I think they can take a lot out of it. Sometimes you just can't legislate for that physicality and the power. But I thought overall the way they played, the energy they showed, and they seemed to be able to figure out a way how to, give the South Africans a really, really good game. And I thought they should have won it at the end. Didn't think that was a penalty. I didn't think Bigger slapped it down. And unfortunately for him, he missed that conversion where they could have been 2 points up. But for them to score a try with 13 men near the end off them all themselves, they can take a fair bit out of it, but you just fear now that was the chance gone.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about South Africa, to be fair. I mean, they haven't been playing in Super Rugby. Did they just take a little bit longer than normal to get back into really intensive test match footy?
They looked lost. They really did. They didn't have an answer to the balance in the way that Wales were playing. They physically couldn't dominate them, which is unusual for a South African side. And when they were chasing the game, the only thing that got them back into it was line out more. All their players in there for one, and a very good, well set up one. Before that, I think, both hookers scored, but not the style that we had seen them become world champions for. I was very surprised at their lack of I don't know, the lack of game plan, a lack of precision out there?
Oh, I think it was a typical first Test match of the year for them in regards to bringing their players together from around the world. It's one of those things, their players are everywhere. Argentina had to face that. They did pretty well against Scotland, but if you think of this performance for the Springboks, they got out of jail, they survived this game, and I think they'll look at that and go, you know what, this was almost like our first hit out. A straight out first hit out. We'll be better. Look, all the names, all the faces are there. They're fit and healthy. The one guy who didn't play was Andre Pollard. He wasn't involved. I think he's a major, major player for them at first 5'8". You know, Elton Junkies is a player who's been there or thereabouts, but never really delivered as a starting first 5 at an international level. Andre Pollard, to me, is the guy who's led them and driven them in World Cups, has driven them to success. I think they'll be a significant team when he gets back out there.
Oh, I just think it's that balance that we spoke about. I think, you know, when you look at the championship where they played that first game and it was just a maul, high ball, this is against us. And then they went out and later on in the series and played expansive. It's when they get that balance right. And I think, you know, Yankees hasn't had his Lolosio moment yet. He still hasn't been able to find that balance.
He's had plenty of chances. He's had plenty of chances.
You know, it's a bit like Sexton for you guys, a bit like Sexton. Although the other player's very good, he just brings a calmness and go, oh, we're under pressure, oh, I'll kick it, I'll bounce it out in the corner. It's that stuff that Pollard brings.
They'll be ready when we arrive in South Africa. I can tell you that for a fact.
Yeah, they will.
They'll be ready.
I can tell you something. We've got a good balance on this panel of smarts, bit of fire, and we've got our trivia question.
Oh, here we go.
We do this every week, so I've got a trivia question for you at home and for our panel, of course. This week, Keith Earls is second on Irish's all-time try-scoring list. Who sits first and third?
Do you think that's a bit biased?
It is a little bit. I'll stay out of this, lads. So where you go?
No, please don't. Please stay in it.
So you're not sure? You're not sure? I think the old I'm not sure. So all of a sudden
I was watching it on the screen last night.
Oh, right.
Well, while these guys debate it,
Here we go.
we'll take a quick break and we'll come back with the answer for you.
Kia ora guys, it's my turn for Jersey Tales this week. The jerseys are 3 here in one of the rooms, so come on through and take a look. This is all my jerseys here. You've come at a good time because I'm actually sorting them out to reframe a few and put a few in frames. When I say reframe, this one here is first test against the All Blacks in 2006 at Eden Park. This is my Tukoroa Pirates jersey. This is where it all began for me, really. I'm from a big family. I'm one of 8 kids, 5 boys in our family, so I used to play for them first 15 and then go play for Pirates afterwards, and I got the opportunity to play with 2 other brothers there, so there's 3 boys in the senior team of us 5. And then also this one here, which is Southern United later on. Pirates and Tukoroa amalgamated, so they become Southern United in about 20 years ago, just over 20 years ago.
And it's a big day in the life of 21-year-old Isaac Boss as he takes over the starting role from Reece Nugget at halfback.
That's where it all began for me for Waikato as well, you know. Being from somewhere like Tukoroa, you're pretty staunch Muli man, you know. So and that represents for me my first real opportunity. I remember Fozzie was coaching and I was about to head down to Otago University, I think, to do physiotherapy as you leave school, and he said, look, we rate you quite highly, would you stay here? So I just did management at Waikato Uni like everyone does. And then, the next year I was playing for Waikato, and it's important as well because that's where I finished my career as well. Geez, I think it was 17 years later.
And what a big moment for Isaac Boss. We've seen him from Waikato, the Chiefs, the Hurricanes, and now a test debut for him.
I always wanted to play for Ireland. I played for New Zealand 19s. I was playing sevens when I was younger as well, and I was on New Zealand standby, but I stopped playing that because I'd lose my eligibility. So if I ever pulled on a New Zealand jersey at senior level, I'd never be able to play for Ireland. And then 2004, I got the call that you'd been selected on the end of year tour, you know, so I was like... And then I said, look, I want to play for Ireland. And then the voice at the other end of the phone said, well, I guess you've got a decision to make if it's now or you might never get the opportunity. So, yeah, eventually got over to Ireland in 2005.
A lot of people would listen to that and say, how on earth could you turn your back on an All Blacks jersey?
I guess it's when you're growing up, and like Tupura explained how important all these jerseys were to me, and I guess I was quite aware. I had a cousin actually that played for Ireland before I did, so her name was Anne-Marie McAllister from Pataru and played for the Irish women's team, so I was always really aware of it. And I remember I used to always get up and watch Six Nations. Dad was a massive rugby fan, so we'd be up at 3 and 4 in the morning watching the Five Nations at the time, and I heard the stat that Ireland had never beaten the All Blacks, and I thought, I'd love to be in that team that beats the All Blacks one day. This is Liam Messham's jersey, actually, the All Black jersey, 2013. That's an important jersey to me because I guess in this game, playing against Liam, obviously from our connections at Chiefs, and obviously where it all started at Waikato and Hautapu down the road here, we were club mates there. And that game there, we thought we had won it. And then obviously that's the game in Dublin, which was the last kick that they took twice. For me, it just symbolises everything around rugby connections with Liam from home. I'm pretty happy that Liam, came up afterwards and said, we've got to swap this jerseys, man. We've got to swap this. How cool is this in Dublin, So, yeah, that's a great story. That's Ireland against England, if you look there in the centre, 2007, and that was at Croke Park. In Dublin. We beat England by a record score, 40-odd points, and I scored the last try in the match, so it's kind of ironic. That's what everybody in Ireland remembers me for. And that's, if you're walking down the street, they'll always mention, you scored against England in Croke Park.
Sean Perry switches play. Has got the legs to get there. He certainly has. It's Isaac Boss, the scrum half, of course. And this is now a horrible defeat for England.
Why that's so significant is Croke Park, Lansdowne Road was getting knocked down and getting built again for the Aviva Stadium that it is now. So they had to find a place to play their home matches, and they actually ended up renting out Croke Park. And Croke Park's the bastion of Gaelic games, all Irish sports. So the Catholics played Gaelic football, and the Protestants and anyone else or foreigners played rugby, and it was the whole idea of having a foreign sport being played on Croke Park, and especially being the English as well. So it was quite controversial, and you'd get goosebumps. I remember at the time of the anthem, there's all the guys crying and a bit of a hush going through the crowd, and it was actually a turning point in Irish rugby, I think. So we beat the English by a record score. After that, they were like celebrating. All the Gaelic guys were watching rugby. It sort of united the country, and I think they're paying the dividends for it now, that there's just a massive supporter base, and young kids from any denomination or religion are playing rugby. It's brilliant. All right, guys, that's my Jersey Tales. Thanks very much for letting me share it.
The memories. They must bring back some fond memories for you as well, seeing some of that footage, Alan. But what sort of impact did Isaac Boss have in Ireland and some of the other Kiwis that have gone over?
Oh, brilliant. You could list them all off, but Bossy was full of joy and happiness and real bubbly character. He was with Ulster, he was with Leinster, brilliant player as well. And, just being in training camps with him or playing with him for Ireland, really positive energy all the time. And he was loved there, really, really popular. And he had a big impact. There's more. Dougie Howlett, Rua Tupoki, guys I played with Munster, Lafemi Maffey, Jason Holland, the Hurricanes coach. He was playing club rugby when he got a call up for Munster in 99-2000 season. So yeah, incredible impact from those guys. But Bossy was really, really popular in that Irish jersey as well.
OK, well, time now to answer the trivia question. They've had enough time to think. They've had about 8 minutes. Have you had enough time at home? Just a reminder, this is the question. Keith Earl sits second on Irish's all-time try-scoring list. Who sits first and third? Marshy?
Well, look, I don't... If this is wrong, I'm going to look like a complete idiot.
That happens often on the show.
Yeah, but Brian O'Driscoll has to be one of them, and I would suggest he's probably the top try scorer. And my other outlandish guess was a former teammate of mine at the Ospreys called Tommy Bowe.
Anyone else agree? Or
I've got O'Driscoll first and Stringer third, just because he
Peter Stringer.
Just because he played for
He only
354
scored
million years.
and I'd try every now and again.
Well,
He's a
here
good
is
man,
the
mate.
answer.
What are the answers? Here they
We
are.
need to know the answers, don't
You
you?
need to know the answers. You need to know the
Oh, there it is.
Justin Marshall.
Way.
He might have got a little bit of help, though.
Did not.
You got a little bit of help from Alan. Stop it. Brian O'Driscoll, there he is. He scored 46 tries, and Tommy Bowe scored 30 tries. Good ratio there for Tommy Bowe. You think about that. You need to remember the answers to the trivia question. Why? Because this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to go to the captain's runs for the All Blacks this Friday in Dunedin. I was there at Eden Park on Friday with our winners, but we've got 2 double passes to give away to watch the All Blacks captain's run in Dunedin, thanks to Ford, the official sponsor of the All Blacks. That is Friday afternoon. To be in to win, you have to list those 2 winners. There I
JK's
am.
blowing up.
JK's blowing up. What are you blowing up about? The fact we were at the captain's run, we knew what was going to happen. They trained incredibly well. It was a nice afternoon out there.
Nice pictures too.
Well, a great opportunity
Oh,
to see
good.
the
You
All
guys,
Blacks.
you guys go to the All Black trainings and go to the All Black selections.
Oh,
Fine.
you didn't get an invite.
Marcia and I will just work. Yeah, it's all good. Don't worry
You
about
were
it.
at a function.
It's all good.
You were at a function.
It's all
That's
good. Don't worry about
exactly.
it.
And so were you. You had double.
You guys take all the good jobs.
You went
That's
for
all
2
good.
functions.
No, but,
Email us at
but
the
seriously,
breakdown.
I wanted to
What?
go back. I wanted to go back. Did I, in that jersey, Tales, did I misunderstood? Did I misunderstand that Isaac Boss turned down an All Black jersey to play for Ireland?
No.
An underage one, I think it was under 19s, was it? He got selected. And
No,
that's
didn't he say?
And the 7, so he's.
I need to dig a bit deeper on that. That's a big call, Marshall.
Amazing call.
It is a big call. Yeah.
Why?
You wanted to play for Ireland.
I know, but why? I need to know more.
I think it's probably because I was playing for the All Blacks at the time, mate. It might have something to do with that.
Oh, no. I love the modesty.
No, bossy. I'm kidding, mate. I'm kidding. You're the man.
Here's another big call. You know we never have enough time on this program, so we also have a breakdown podcast as well. JK, he came off the long run, as he does.
The World Game would have failed itself if one of the Pacifica teams does not make the top 4 in the next 2 World Cups. I totally believe that.
So you're giving one of the Pacific nations 2 World Cups to make it into the semi-finals. It's a big call, JK, but an important one. Explain why.
Well, I just think them coming into, Moana Pacifica and the Fiji draw coming into Super Rugby has been outstanding. I think Fiji will push a lot of the Northern Hemisphere sides. I think Scotland would be under threat. And I just think we need to open our game up, not to be so protective. The great thing about Japan, I know they got beaten the other night, was that after making the top 8, they're getting some of the bigger games, playing France, playing Australia. Yep. But what I'd love to see from the Northern Hemisphere is for you guys up there to show some courage and have a promotion relegation game for Romania, because not only do we need to have a Pacifica team being good enough to make the top 8, we also need to open up the 6 nations. And if Italy come last, they need to have a playoff against Romania. Wales came last this year, because if we're going to have a game like football, we need to start opening it up and seeing these teams succeed.
Last year was awesome when Fiji came to New Zealand and played them in 2 test matches, and I think that was the start for me of the journey that they're on, the path you're talking about, because all of a sudden I think we've seen what's happened in Super Rugby Pacific. On the weekend against Tonga, they were really, really good, Marshy. We knew the talent was always there with Fiji. We know that they've got a really strong coaching staff, a number of familiar faces. But if you look at the way they play, the development they've made, the exposure to playing the All Blacks, I think they're the one team that is closer than the others right now of testing everyone.
But my question to both you guys, one from the Northern Hemisphere, you, Marshy, is should we have promotion relegation in the Championship and promotion relegation in the Six Nations? So the last in the Championship plays the winner of the Pacific Nations Cup.
The debate has been going on for a couple of years now. Italy hadn't won a game in the Six Nations for, I can't get the exact number, but it was 6-7 years. And every year it was coming up that there should be relegation. They should have to play Georgia, Romania, Portugal, Spain, the second tier, whoever. And Georgia were the ones probably knocking on the door the last few years. They've played test matches in the November series against the Tier 1 teams in the Northern Hemisphere. But because it's down to money, John, and it's down to the stakeholders that if Scotland, if Ireland, if Wales finished bottom and they got relegated out of it, well, it can, you know...
It's 65 million euro each they get from the Six Nations.
But the attention it would bring, and the fact we're talking about whether or not, you know, the Rugby Championship or Sanzar needs to expand and include maybe one of the island teams, one of the Japan maybe, Marshy, but bottom line... Their teams need to get exposure and opportunities. But I think the development of the teams, they're getting better, right? They're getting closer. The gap might still be, like it was with the All Blacks last year with Fiji, 30 to 40 points. But it took a lot longer for it to become 30 to 40 points. It wasn't from when we played them, minute 1 to minute 80. It took a long time. I think the development is well and truly there.
I think, yeah, I do. But I also feel exactly the same way about tampering with that main product, because there's so much money involved, and absolutely we need to continue the development, but I think the progression is to go through the likes of Super, the European Cup, whatever it might be, getting those players more exposure so when they come together they're better players, like what's happening with the Drua and Fiji, and then World Rugby giving them bigger fixtures. That's the key.
Yep.
No, Fiji can't wait another 6 years to play the All Blacks. They should play them next year. Yeah. They should regularly get competition against the top-tier nations. If they do that, they'll improve. If they continue to play each other, they're not going to get anywhere and they're not going to learn. So I would go down that pathway.
Do you think maybe that's what happened to Argentina when they were in... When the Jaguares were in Super Rugby, they got to that point where they were good enough, experienced enough, had played New Zealand teams through the Rugby Championship to get their win. And that's significant, you know. It's just like Ireland beating the All Blacks, right? Yeah, those big wins are significant. Exactly. Japan beating South Africa in a Rugby World Cup.
Sunwolves. Yes. You know, Japan got better.
The global league and the global calendar. And I think that's where we may see some movement in the next couple of years, where you'll still be in the Six Nations, but in a global league, you may have to do relegation. There'll be a couple of tiers in that. It could happen. I think it's coming sooner rather than later.
Well, we've not got quick hits tonight, but Jeff, you've actually noticed something about the game last night that you want to touch on.
Well, look, and this is just a question. We've talked about this for a while now, is the fact the impact the scrum has on the game. The fact in terms of teams and games losing momentum. So last night, I got someone to do the research and look at when the game stopped and when the game restarted. And this is a restart, remember, the scrum. That's what it is, a launching platform. There were 13 scrums in the game last night. It took 13 and a half minutes in total out of the game. Now, I'm not saying out of the game in terms of that is when the game got started again. Now, if you add that to the 9 kicks at goal that happened, and you've got up to a minute and a half, most teams don't take a minute and a half, but up to that, there's between 22 to 25 minutes of the 80 where there's actually no rugby being played. You know, and to me, is that what we want in the game? Is that how important the scrum has become? That it's at the moment 17% in terms of time of last night's game was spent on the scrum, Alan. Do you think the scrum is that critical to the game of rugby union?
It's a difficult one. I think they've tried to tidy it up and stop all these resets. I was on commentary last night. You were on commentary. What we saw last night was a messy scrum, reset, next scrum, penalty, free kick. So they're being encouraged. We're not going to have 4, 5, 6 scrums like we did have.
Thankfully.
I think it's got better. I think it's got better. I think they're trying to police it. I don't have the answer of what you do. I think a scrum is a really vital part of it. The same way for me when I played in the forwards that a maul is. I think the maul is a complete mess, but scrums do eat up a lot of time. And it's a big focus now for all teams, ball and play time. You know, and we see in the French league, ball is out a lot, it's a lot slower, and you would think it's throw it around jouer all the time. It's not. But it's an issue. It's an issue in the modern game with the scrum. I think it's got better, Jeff, but when you kind of give those stats to the viewers and people, it's alarming, really.
That's why I asked you. I didn't ask these two because he's got no.
I just feel sorry. I feel sorry for the poor guy you made study all those scrums.
No, I didn't make them study. Yeah, they fast forwarded and fast forwarded.
45 seconds.
Namesake.
45 seconds from the whistle to get the scrum formed and set. Done.
Now we've got 45 seconds, and
that's it. That's my answer.
It's 1-0. The series is by no means over. Predictions for Dunedin?
Oh, I think it'll be 3-0. I thought if we could win last night, then we'll continue to get better if we don't make too many changes.
What happens in Dunedin?
You want a quick answer? I don't know. I think we'll be better. I think Ireland will be better, and I think they'll pick themselves up. Whether they'll win it or not, I think it's still a tall order.
Who wins, Marshy?
Both teams will be better. The All Blacks will get the job done, though.
Jeff?
I think the All Blacks will win. That's all.
That's all.
Thanks very much, Alan. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
Great to
see you in Dunedin.
Thanks so much, Alan. And we'll see you all next week as well.
It's a new year of international rugby, and Ireland come to Eden Park to try and storm a fortress that has for 28 years withstood all challenges. Sexton ringrose the infield pass. Now they go wide to the Vincent Key goals. It is over. Little catchway for Cooper. It sits it. It is in. And now Arnie Salvia busting through. Can he sneak it away? Oh, no, he needs it. Brilliant try.
Breakdown is brought to you by Nurofen Zavance. Available every day at Chemist Warehouse.